Your whole life you make plans. Plans to find that someone special and plans to work toward retirement.
Then something unexpected happens that could ruin it all. Now what's your plan? Call Michaels and Smolak today. We have a game plan, the better game plan.
There is, needless to say, a lot to digest on all of this as we begin digging for new perspective on really what was a bombshell day. Psychologist Dr. Chris Allen is here, Syracuse.com blogger and radio host Brent, and my former co-anchor here at TV5, Maureen Green, who currently blogs at MaureenGreenCNY.com. Let's go and start with Maureen. Give me one word that describes today.
Oh, 2 words. Hot mess.
Hot mess.
It's such a sad, hot mess.
Brent.
I got to say surreal. I mean, as much as we've heard what's been documented, what's out there, we know there was more coming out. It's just still surreal to hear all of this surrounding somebody that you're so familiar with and has been a part of people's lives, in some cases, for 36 years.
Doctor, as you sort of digest what we woke up with to now where we are right now, what's a word that you would use to describe it?
Well, even though I've treated sexual abuse survivors for 20 years, I would still say shocking and disappointing.
Shocking and disappointing.
I still feel disappointed in people.
Bernie Fine fired tonight, Maureen. As I go back over the day, it has to be the phone call, don't you think?
I think so, the recorded phone call. You know, until this time, the person who was on Bernie Fine's side, the one who had the person who was on the inside of the whole thing was head coach Jim Boeheim. And not only did he defend his longtime coach, Bernie Fine, but he said that the accusers were lying. And I think there were a lot of people in the community that just, you know, they wanted to believe Coach Boeheim. They certainly wanted to believe Bernie Fine. And there were these 2 unknown accusers that had been, you know, their past had been investigated. The whole thing had been investigated. But now on the inside is the wife. And for the wife to corroborate it and also to sort of reveal that there was a culture in the home where this was just accepted and it had become almost normal is so disturbing.
Doctor, the latest accuser who came out, his father says, my kid is lying. They have an estranged relationship, but has talked to us tonight and talked to other media outlets and said, this kid is a liar. To someone who comes to a therapist and presents as a sexual abuse survivor, this certainly makes a complicated situation even more complicated, doesn't it?
It makes a very complicated situation more complicated, but most sexual abuse survivors never report it to the news. They don't even tell their own family members, but often if they do tell their family members about things, the family member would often not believe them.
You say
that's
most,
not atypical.
The doctor says most people who are sexual abuse victims never see prosecution. They never get any.
Most sexual abuse goes unreported. Even today, most children don't tell. Still.
Yeah. Maureen brought up Coach Boeheim as being sort of on the inside, you know, up until this latest insider who we heard from, Lori Fine. Brent, you're close to this team. You're tapped into people that I'm not tapped into. So my question to you is, what's next for Jim Boeheim? Does Jim Boeheim survive this? There's a lot of talk out there on the internet tonight that he may not.
It's a good question, Michael, because we saw how swiftly things went with the Penn State story. But what's missing here in the case of Boeheim is there's no Mike McCreary here. And if you recall, Mike McCreary was the assistant coach at Penn State who witnessed sexual assault going on at Penn State, reported it to Joe Paterno, and then it went up the chain from there. Boeheim has been adamant from the get-go, now 3 times on the record, even saying the words, I'm not Joe Paterno, that he didn't know about this, he didn't witness this, he's not covering anything up. So that's what's missing from this story. So, I mean, it just seems like at this point, Michael, it's like the Syracuse weather. You wait 10 minutes, something else is going to come out.
But don't you
so
think...
at this point, I say he does survive this, but that depends on what he knew and when he knew it, which to this point he says he didn't know.
But that's what I want to know. When the Post-Standard did an investigation on this several years ago, and so did the Syracuse Police Department, they would have had to have gone to Coach Boeheim. They would have had to, and just asked him, have you seen anything? Have you heard anything?
Nothing in his statements, which have all come out on paper, indicate that this was anything more than a bombshell to him when ESPN ran that. We have much more to talk about here. We could probably do several hours on this. Coming up here on CBS5, he's the voice of the Orange, Matt Park. He's talking to sports director John Evanson for his perspective and gut reaction to that Lori Fine phone call. We'll be right back. CBS5 coverage of the Bernie Fine abuse investigation continues now, and the Lori Fine phone call. This is the part where she indicates she's warned her husband the allegations of molestation could leak out.
I said to him, you know, Bobby and I talked, and I know some things about you that if you keep pushing are going to be let out.
Yeah.
Didn't even flinch.
I know, that's what I'm saying. He doesn't.
He says, here, no, let him go ahead. Sure, let him go right ahead.
He doesn't think he can be too. Like,
He thinks that, I think he thinks he's above the law.
So what about the law? We asked well-known Syracuse defense attorney Emil Rossi for his take on that phone call.
In terms of the atmosphere of the investigation, the tape is devastating. It delivers a real body blow. That notwithstanding, I don't think that there's anything on that tape that is of any evidentiary value whatever.
Attorney Emil Rossi telling us today it's hearsay. He says it's not admissible in court. He also told me tonight Bobby Davis, the accuser, called the wrong person. He says he should have called Bernie Fine to get him to talk about that alleged abuse. That would have worked more legally in his favor, he says. The chancellor of Syracuse University, Nancy Cantor, fired Bernie Fine tonight. We know that now. She wrote to every student and faculty member to say that the phone call was not handed over to SU when it did its 2005 investigation. So let's continue with the panel here on the phone call. The casual nature of the conversation. I was telling people today I've been more upset about the weather.
Haven't we all?
It was shocking to just, I mean, they're talking about the weather. They're just talking, well, yeah, and this and that, and your average person is listening to this, and just, that's what really, when I first heard it this morning, I mean, what's being talked about is horrifying, but what adds to it, and what, and certainly the doctor can speak to this, is just how casual this becomes to people that are in this culture, that are in this life. But it just continues the surreal twists and turns that the story takes, Michael, that they can talk about something like this as if they're talking, like SU fans talk about the game the night before.
What is it that would have someone talking so casually? That's the only word I can come up with about it.
There are families where there is a history of abuse that's multi-generational, and it does become, to some degree or another, viewed as it's normalized and viewed as part of the culture. And even to children who get abused from outside the family, you know, that's why they can be abused up until the time they're adults or beyond, is because there becomes this kind of culture, traumatic sexualization. It becomes just sort of normalized and accepted. And it takes someone from the outside to say, maybe, or even an outside perspective, like to say, hey, wait a minute, that something's wrong with what happened.
Syracuse police did not have this tape when they, until last week, when ESPN came to town in dramatic fashion and started broadcasting the allegations. They didn't have this tape to go on. They say they had nothing to go on, really, in this case. I want to talk about anger, Maureen. Because I wanted you here to speak to sort of how the community in this place we live is reacting to all of this over the course of more than a week now. Take me through sort of the anger scale over the last 24 hours that you think that you've been tapped into?
Well, we were talking about it before in the newsroom. I mean, first, everybody, I think, was angry at ESPN. Like, why did they have this story when there was nothing to go on? And then they were angry at the district attorney for being angry at the Syracuse police. And it was all sort of buzzing around on the outside. And it's like, leave our program alone. You know, this is a good university. This is a buttoned-up program. We won the national championship. Look at Coach Boeheim. He's got this record for Division I coaching wins, and so does Bernie Fine, and just leave us alone, and why are you starting up all this trouble? And it's been amazing just in the last 24 hours how that anger has shifted. And now everybody is just, I think, just sad and angry. Everybody feels that they were sold a bill of goods. Somebody on Twitter, not on Twitter, somebody on leaving a comment on Syracuse.com after this said, all of a sudden they said, wow, Coach Boeheim, I hope he bet on the right horse. It's
Boy, truer
now
words.
suddenly everything is.
It's all just so elevated and escalated.
And now they're angry with Bernie Fine, and then they're angry with Lori Fine,
Right.
and they were angry with the accusers for starting all this trouble. But now they're angry at everything, including the institution.
And that's something we saw backed off tonight, Michael, in the statement that Jim Boeheim put out. It was very carefully scripted. It was very careful.
He didn't write it, that's for sure.
Well, I think he didn't, but, you know, the right thing was said in that he regrets how strong he was initially. I mean, you can't blame a guy for defending a friend of 50 years, but he specifically went after the alleged accusers and said that they were out for money. They were out for reasons other than to get their whatever form of justice they were looking for. He's backing off that now tonight, but he definitely went all in then on his defense of Bernie Fine. So now how
he put it all
do
on
you
the line.
backtrack?
I remember saying that on television.
Well, that's it. You can't put all your chips in the middle of the table and say, no, I'll take a few of those
can't
back.
unring the bell.
That's exactly it. So you wonder how that's going to go forward.
And
We're going to get to all of that. We've got more coming up. We've got the voice of the Orange, Matt Park, and I've got these fine friends with me for more on this right after this. What do we take away from these wild developments in the Bernie Fine case after a day like Sunday? Psychologist Dr. Chris Allen has something to say on really the takeaway from this. What do you think it is?
I think an important takeaway is that with the media attention to this that is on the news, on sports, on ESPN, is the attention to victims that they don't typically get. And I hope that is a message to people not
It could be a positive thing?
Not to stand by and watch things and not report it. And if you are a victim of abuse, take the chance that you will be believed.
Brent,
Speak up.
thank you, doctor. And I know it was important for you to get that across, and it's part of the reason you came here tonight, and I really appreciate it.
Clients for 20 years have
Really
wished to
appreciate
have
that.
a voice.
What will
Thank
you
you.
watch, Brent,
Yeah.
as we move into this week?
I think that was very well said, and I think that's a great voice that people are being lent here, and they feel they can be more comfortable to come forward with this. But two things from a sports perspective. One, how will the national media come after Boeheim now? Will they do it similarly that they did with Joe Paterno at Penn State? And
There's a drum beating, right?
There's definitely a drum beating now, and I think it's getting louder. And I think, you know, this is supposed to be a pretty electric season for this basketball team. How will this continue to evolve as a distraction? Will it come up in press conferences? And how will this team handle, you know, they had an empty seat as a tribute to Bernie Fine. That seat's now permanently vacated. How are they going to move on from that?
Yeah, no more empty seat. Maureen, you have not blogged on this topic yet, but you don't shy away from writing about controversial things.
No.
Have you made a decision not to?
No.
If you were to write a blog in your head right now, what angle do you take?
Well, I would say that first the Catholic Church and then the Boy Scouts of America, and now I'm wondering if college sports will be the next big institution where we start to see trouble of this nature.
Will you write a blog on it that I'll read this week?
Yeah, possibly. You know, to be honest with you,
No
until
pressure.
today. Well, no, but until today, I didn't have that strong of an opinion about it. I was just going to wait and see what happened. But today, I think everybody.
It's all different.
I mean, it's all different.
It's all different. I agree with that. Yeah, I want to thank each of you. You stayed up late.
Thank you.
But you know what? You offered perspective that I really was craving, and I think a lot of people were. So thank you all. Really.
Pleasure to be here.
having us.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
We have the nightcap coming up next.